Whetstones are essential for your knife sharpening setup. Let's talk about grits, baby. If you're new to the knife sharpening, you don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes. If you're experienced like myself, you probably have gone down too far so that you can't escape. Hi, I'm Naoto. I'm an expert sharpener at Knifewear. I spend a lot of time using and learning about these sharpening stones. So I'll be your guide to the world of sharpening. If you're new to this channel, you can find lots of videos about me teaching how to sharpen the knives on our sharpening playlist, as well our monthly live show, Naoto's Nerdy Power Hour. I know how confusing and overwhelming this information can be, so I will outline the basic information about these sharpening grits. Then I will talk about each individual stones. Finally, I'll go through all the grits that every knife sharpener needs. Let's talk about grits. Grits are the size of abrasive particles in whetstones. Smaller the number is, the larger the size of the particles. Thus, it cuts deeper into steels. The larger the number is, the smaller the particles are, so that leaves much finer edge. So we use variety of grits not only to just sharpen, but to repair or thinning or polishing the bevels of the Japanese knives. Generally, at Knifewear, we break these grits into 4 different categories: coarse, medium, fine, and super fine. For the coarse grits, we use to repair the edge or use it on very, very dull knives. Medium grits are fantastic to finish most of your European style knives, as well as great stepping stones to the fine stones for Japanese kitchen knives. Fine stones we use to finish most of Japanese knives and having a very balanced edge between smooth and bitey. Finally, the super fine stones are great for those people who want to give super mirror edge or super silky edge. As well, it's great for straight razors. Having said that, not all the same grit stones are created equal. It all varies depending on type of material they use and type of method that they use. Ultimately though, that changes how long and how well the stone works. Well, that's why the cheap and cheerful stones, they don't last as long, they wear fast, and they don't cut as fast either. A lot is also dependent on your skill, but having the right tool is also very important. So let's talk about the main brands that we carry. Each brand represents slight different way of making it and a slight difference in the quality. Well, let's start from the Knifewear branded stones. These stones are fantastic. We handpicked which grit to go in Knifewear branded stones so that you don't really have to think too hard which stones to pick. These stones will work for any sharpening levels from beginner to the expert. We're so proud those are manufactured by Naniwa Abrasive, one of the best sharpening stone manufacturers in the world. Speaking of Naniwa, here are their professional line of stones, formerly known as Chosera. These stones are a little bit harder stones than our Knifewear branded stones, so that it will last a little bit longer. It doesn't wear as fast as well. So those professional series was originally created for straight razors. Therefore, it is much harder than most of other whetstones. Harder whetstones are great because it does not wear as fast as softer stones, so that it keeps its flatness for a longer period of time. And then we have these Shapton Glass stones. These could be great complement to the professional stones because they have such wide variety of grits, anywhere from 220 all the way up to 30,000 grit. The Glass Stone series, they put the sharpening stone on top of tempered glass to avoid the stone from warping or distorting, so that every time you sharpen them, as long as you chew them, the surface is flat. Now I'm gonna talk about each individual different stones. So why don't we bring the camera over? Let's start from the coarse stones. This is lobster 150 or 180 grit stone. This is fantastic, very inexpensive. It cuts steel really fast, but the stone itself wears really fast as well. It is relatively inexpensively made, so it's really good, but it can wear really fast. It's great to bring it in the fields and such as well. This Shapton Glass stone, 220 grit. This stone is fantastic. You don't have to soak them in the water, it's just splash and go. And I will usually use them to thin the blade, and also it doesn't leave that deep scratch, so it's fantastic actually. Knifewear 220 grit. This is great. It's got a nice thickness. It does wear slightly faster than a Shapton and does need to soak in the water for a little bit before you use them, but it does cut really fast, and relatively speaking, it does not wear as fast as other 220 grit stones. I also use this for removing the chips or rebeveling, reprofiling, and everything. Professional 400 grit stone. This is fantastic. Splash and go. It's not as quite coarse as 220, obviously. I sometimes use this stone to put the very quick edge on, say for example, Henkel's, Wüsthof, Victorinox, and finish, leave that edge at 400 grit. What happens is that it leaves nice, coarse, toothy edge that bites into the tomato skin and such a little bit easy. Shapton Glass 500. This is going to be a great stepping stone from a 220 or the 150 grit, especially when you are thinning the bevel with those coarse grit stones, because those coarse grit will leave a little bit more deeper scratches. And these are fantastic to remove those scratches off, as well for those knives that need a quick touch-up. This is actually quite good before going into the 1000 or the medium grit stones. Professional 600. Similar to the professional 400 grit stone, it's slightly finer as 400 and 600. I don't particularly find much use on this one, but it works very similar to the 400. It's also the splash and go type. So if you are to choose either or, you can just get one. Next, medium grit stones. Medium grit stones are anywhere usually from 800 to some categorized to 2000. So I have them all the way up to 2000 grit here. Let's start. Professional 800 grit stone. This is great. This could be your finishing stone for the Western style knives, like a Henkel's, Wüsthof, IKEA knives that leaves pretty good toothy edge, as well as for the nice smooth edge as well. Knifewear 1000. This here requires a little bit of soaking in the water, but it's nice and soft, easy to deal with. It's really nice muddy stone that leaves very nice edge. Also fantastic stepping stone before making a so-called kasumi finish. Softer grit stones that requires a little bit more truing, but nonetheless, it is fantastic stones to have. Shapton 1000 grit. Shapton Glass series is also fantastic. It's easy to work with. It's splash and go. It's hard to warp over time. It cuts faster and leaves fantastic edge on them. This is really good. When you sharpen them, it does have good feel to it. Professional 1000 grit. This is from my personal use. I've been using them for a little while. Little bit of hard. Hard stones are great. It will retain the flatness for longer, so that when you're sharpening straight razors and stuff, it does have very, very nice, precise edge to it. And also when you're sharpening the back of the single bevel knives, these knives, stones are fantastic as well. Shapton Glass 2000. This could be one of my favorite stones in our collections right here. This is great to finish basically your Western knives, Henkel's, Wüsthof, to that little bit more next level. I've mentioned in 1000 and 800, you could finish your knives with those grits. When you bring it up to 2000, it shines, it just starts to sing a little bit more. For the same reason, I love this Professional 2000 stone as well. I used to sharpen the lots of Western knives, European style knives with Professional 400 and finish with this 2000 grit that made the edge super nice and smooth for those European style knives. Found sometimes it's a little bit more overkill and does not last as long, but it is nonetheless fantastic edge when you're sharpening with your 2000 grit. Alrighty, next let's talk about fine stones. Fine stones are usually around 3000 grit all the way to somewhere around 6000. Fine grits, I usually use it to finish most of the Japanese knives. Leave really nice smooth silky edge as well as to leave certain bitiness so that it doesn't slide off from the certain types of food. First, the Shapton Glass 4000. This is a great stone. I finished lots of knives with the 4000. Leaves really nice smooth silky edge as well leaves certain bitiness to the edge. Bites is great because those bites will cut into the say tomato skin or the pepper skins a little bit easier. Shapton 6000, for the same reason, I use them to finish some type of knives, especially some stainless steel knives like VG10. Not so much with the high carbon steel or the high-speed powder steel, where these steels are a little bit easier to make it as smooth. With the 4000, in order to get, say, for example, VG10 into the same smoothness as 4000, you may want to bring it all the way up to 6000. Arashiyama, this is great. This stone is one of the few stones that we have that is made so-called the resinoid construction. It's a resin-based. So from the touch, you can't really tell, but if you're sensitive enough, you can tell it's actually a little bit cushiony because it's a resin-based. This resin-based soft stones is fantastic. It touches on the bevel of the knife really nice and even. So when you're trying to make so-called kasumi finish, which is to make the cladding steel a little bit more foggy and the core steel nice and shiny, this stone is fantastic. When you try to make it a little bit more finer, use this as well, like a mirror polish. Use this as well with less mud. If there is less mud, you get much finer mirror polish. So, Knifewear 4000 stone. This is my go-to fine stone that we have in our selection. This is nice splash and go type. It leaves really nice smooth edge, and once you get really nice mud, you could get a kasumi polish as well as you can get really nice mirror polish at the edge as well. The edge you create with this is going to be super nice and silky, slightly less bitey than some of the other stones, but it is gorgeous stone here. Last but not least, the Professional 3000 stone here. Really nice and hard, splash and go. This does work like 4000, 5000 type of smoothness and polishness as well. If you want to get really nice silky edge with the fine stones, Professional grits are for that. Let's talk about super fine stones. Super fine stones, I only use them occasionally for those edges that I'm looking for, like very specialized edge, like sashimi slicing yanagiba that does not cut into the skin, just going to flesh and to do very smooth cut. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what these super fine stones are for. As well, for those who's looking to get really nice mirror polish. If you use the right setup, you could get as close to the mirror polish as well. Let's start. Shapton Glass 8000. Like other Shapton Glass stones, this is also a fantastic setup to finish your most of your edge with. It gets really nice and sharp and shiny. This won't give as much of mirror as the other stones do though, but it's still got really nice silky sharpness with this one. If you were to look for a super silky edge, this Knifewear 8000 stone is gonna give you really, really nice smooth edge. This is also really popular stone for those who is sharpening a plane blades. And those planers, you need to have as even or as smooth edge as possible. It's nice and muddy so that the edge becomes a little bit more rounder, silkier, and smoother when you're sharpening it. If you like the bevel or edge to be really nice and mirrored, this Kitayama is the one for you. The Kitayama stone, like their counterparts Arashiyama 6000, this Kitayama 8000 resinoid is going to give the edge really nice, more like a mirror polish, a little bit easy. So if you were to make the bevel nice and really shiny, get the Kitayama, it's actually pretty good. Resinoid is the, like Arashiyama, it's a resin base. They use the resin as a adhesive, so it's a little bit softer to touch. Well, this is a Chosera 10,000 grit. Now they changed the name and it's the Professional 10,000 grit from Naniwa. It's so hard. When you make it a super singing shine and singing edge, get this one. Despite the hardness, it is actually quite nice and muddy. It's easy to use. So this has been one of my favorite stones over decades, and I use a little bit less these days because we have a little bit more selection around this grit. For those of you who really wants to get your knife as close to the mirror, get these 3 to get that step up to get the 30,000 mirror polish. That edge you get with the 3000, especially for kitchen knives, it may be a little bit of overkill. I say it because I am looking at kitchen knives more for the functionality rather than look. But if you really like to get your edge that shiny, get this. You can't get any finer than 30,000 grit. If I were to pick stones for my ultimate setup, that is my setup. First, Knifewear 220, nice coarse grit to begin the thinning process. If there is any chips, repairs that need to be done, this is the stone. Next, Shapton 500 stone. This is actually a fantastic stone. All the deep scratches that you created with 220 will be removed with this 500 stone. Then, Knifewear 1000. The bevels that I sharpen with the 500, this will give really nice misty finish. Arashiyama 6000 for the nice so-called Kasumi bevel. What happens is that the outer layer cladding will get really nice misty, then the core steel will shine up very nicely. Shapton 2000. This is my first stone to put the micro bevel on. Jumps up to Knifewear 4000. This is great to finish most of the knives with. And Professional 5000. This will give really, really, really nice smooth edge, as well as really nice balanced bitey edge at the end as well. The last but not least, you will need this Atoma diamond plate to chew or keep the flatness for all the stones you have. That's my setup. I know there are lots to take in, but you don't have to know all of these. These informations are for us as a professional sharpener and as a mentor to other staff. But these informations can be very useful when it comes to you choosing a stone that's right for you. So that wraps up. Leave us in a comment what we might have missed your favorite gear, and check out other sharpening gear at knifewear.com. If you want to learn more about knife sharpening, check out our playlist for knife sharpening techniques.